You ever witnessed something so bizarre, so unexpected, that your brain just hits the pause button, like you're halfway through a normal, boring day, and suddenly you're in the middle of a scene that feels ripped straight out of a sitcom, but the people are real, the voices are loud, and you can't look away? That's exactly what happened to me one random afternoon at Target. I wasn't doing anything exciting. I wasn't even in a rush. I grabbed a basket and was lazily making my way toward the home goods section. I remember thinking about whether I needed new towels or if my current ones were still good enough to survive a few more months. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, cards clinked against the floor, and somewhere nearby, the faint, cheerful Target playlist was playing in the background. And then I heard her. The voice sliced through the ambient store noise like a whistle through fog. High-pitched, sharp, and carrying the unmistakable tone of someone who believed the entire building revolved around her. It wasn't a friendly voice. It wasn't even the annoyed customer voice you sometimes overhear when someone's had a bad day. No, this voice had layers of entitlement baked right in. I stopped walking and glanced toward the next aisle. There she was, mid-40s, with that precision haircut, a sharp bob that looked like it required maintenance every 2 weeks on the dot. Designer sunglasses sat on top of her head like a crown, and she was dressed in a crisp white blouse tucked neatly into expensive-looking jeans. On her wrist, a chunky gold bracelet that jingled every time she moved her hands, and trust me, she moved them a lot while she spoke. This woman, let's just call her Karen, was standing a little too close to a younger girl, practically leaning into her personal space, weaving one hand toward a shelf like she was delivering orders to an employee. Only, here's the catch, this girl, she did not work at Target, not even close. She wasn't in the signature red shirt and khakis you'd expect from an employee. Instead, she was wearing a blue-green polo shirt and black pants, the kind of outfit you'd expect to see on a restaurant server or maybe a coffee shop barista. Her hair was pulled back into a neat ponytail, and she held a small shopping basket with a couple of items inside, clearly there to shop for herself. I could tell instantly she was a customer, just like me. But Karen, either she didn't care or she truly didn't notice. From the way she was speaking, it was as if this young woman had been hired for the sole purpose of catering to her shopping needs. Excuse me, Karen barked, snapping her fingers. Yes, actually snapping her fingers. Can you tell me where you keep the smaller version of this? She held up some boxed appliance like it was a rare treasure that only the chosen employees could help her locate. The girl shifted uncomfortably, her eyebrows pulling together in confusion. She smiled politely and said something I couldn't quite catch from where I was standing, but I recognized the body language. A gentle shake of the head, a little shrug. It was the universal sign for "I think you've got the wrong person." But Karen didn't back off. She leaned in closer, her voice growing louder with every word. I could hear her tone even when the exact sentences blurred together. It was the "I've decided you're my helper and you can't convince me otherwise" tone. The kind of tone that makes you want to melt into the floor to avoid becoming the next target. The younger girl kept smiling politely, but there was an edge to it now, the kind of strained expression people get when they're trying very hard to stay calm. I could practically hear her inner monologue screaming, "Lady, I don't work here. Please just leave me alone." That's when the rest of the store seemed to fade away from me. You know how sometimes, in a moment of pure awkwardness, your attention narrows in on the drama like you're zooming a camera lens? That's exactly what happened. I stopped thinking about towels. I forgot I was in the middle of my own errand. It was just me, Karen, and this poor girl who had somehow become the unwilling star of Karen's personal customer service fantasy. And here's the part that stuck out to me even more. There wasn't a single Target employee in sight to step in and clear up the misunderstanding. No one with a name tag walking by to say, "She doesn't work here, ma'am." It was just the two of them, locked in a weird power struggle neither had signed up for. I stayed where I was, basket dangling from my arm, pretending to browse while Myers stayed tuned to every word. Karen gestured toward another shelf, speaking fast and sharp, clearly expecting answers. The girl opened her mouth, probably about to repeat herself, but I could already tell this wasn't going to end with a simple "oh, sorry for bothering you." No, this had Karen energy written all over it. And I don't mean the kind of energy where someone just complains once and moves on. I mean the full package. The belief that every person in her path is obligated to serve her. The impatience that builds when things don't go exactly her way. And, of course, the ultimate trump card in her deck, the dreaded phrase every retail worker fears. I could feel it coming before she even said it. From where I was standing half hidden behind a shelf of scented candles, I could finally hear the younger woman clearly. Her voice was calm, measured, but there was a weight in it. The sound of someone who's had to repeat themselves one too many times in life. "Mum," she said, "I don't work here. I don't know where that is." Simple, direct, polite. The kind of statement that should have ended the conversation right then and there. But as you might already suspect, this was not the kind of woman to accept reality when it didn't match the script in her head. Karen didn't even pause to acknowledge the words. Instead, she shoved a medium-sized cardboard box into the girl's hands like she'd just passed the Olympic baton. "There," Karen said briskly, "check the price on that. And while you're at it, tell me where you keep the smaller version, and I need to see the other colors." The girl just stood there for a beat, box in hand, eyebrows raised. I could almost see the thought bubble over her head. Is this woman serious right now? And then, as if that wasn't enough, Karen threw in one more demand for good measure. "Oh, and that cabinet over there," she said, pointing to a locked glass display case about 20 feet away. "Open that for me. I want to look at the higher-end models." That's when the girl snapped back into motion. She set the box down on the nearest shelf gently, almost politely, and said, "I really don't work here. I can't help you." She even smiled while saying it, but I could tell the smile was strained now, pulled tight like it was being held together with invisible duct tape. And still, Karen wasn't having it. Her face began to change slowly at first, like a temperature gauge rising. The polite, slightly impatient mask slipped away, revealing a mix of irritation and disbelief. Her cheeks flushed a light pink, her lips pressed into a thin line, and her eyes narrowed into laser focus. She took one step closer to the girl, leaning slightly forward in the way people do when they think they're 40 and being respected. "Don't give me the attitude," she said, her voice slow and sharp. "Just get me your manager." Now, at this point, most people in the girl's position might have just walked away, muttering something like "good luck with that," and left Karen to stew in her own frustration. But the girl didn't move. Instead, she let out a small, almost disbelieving laugh. It wasn't the kind of laugh you share with a friend. It was the kind you make when you're so baffled that your brain needs a second to catch up. She tilted her head slightly, studying Karen for a moment like she was trying to figure out if this was some kind of hidden camera prank. Then she said, slowly and clearly, "Ma'am, I literally don't work here." You'd think that would have been the knockout punch. A simple statement of fact, repeated for the second time, wrapped up with a little emphasis on the word literally for good measure. But nope, Karen wasn't about to be outdone. She took another step forward, her shadow now falling over the girl's shoes. Her eyes narrowed further, her voice rising just enough for nearby shoppers, myself included, to hear every syllable I said. She repeated, drawing out the words like she was talking to a stubborn child. "Get me your manager." This wasn't just a request anymore, it was a challenge, an assertion of dominance. You could tell Karen had entered that dangerous zone where reason was no longer in control. This was pure Karen autopilot. She had locked onto the script in her mind where she was the customer, the other person was the employee, and that was that. No amount of reality could convince her otherwise. The girl, however, didn't flinch. She didn't step back. She didn't even glance around for help. If anything, she seemed amused. I could see the faintest twitch at the corner of her mouth, like she was suppressing a smile. It wasn't a nervous smile, it was the kind you see on someone who's about to do something they lynch. I a little too much. Karen either didn't notice or didn't care. She stood there, chin up, waiting for the girl to admit defeat and produce a magical manager from thin air. The tension between them was almost comical. On us. Other shoppers were pretending to browse, but were clearly watching the exchange from the corners of their eyes. One man in a baseball cap froze mid-reach for a bottle of dish soap, his head tilted slightly toward the scene. A mom with a toddler in her cart slowed her pace, staring down the adjacent aisle just to stay within earshot. Everyone could feel it. Something was about to happen. Karen's stance was rigid now, her arms crossed tightly across her chest, foot tapping against the floor like a countdown timer. She had no idea that she was standing on the edge of a verbal cliff. Up until now, the girl had been the picture of patience. She had endured the finger snapping, the unreasonable demands, the repeated requests from managers she didn't even have. She had smiled, shrugged, and politely explained herself not once, but multiple times. But there's a limit. And I swear to you, I saw the exact moment she reached hers. It started small, a subtle shift in her posture. Her shoulders rolled back, her chin lifted, and the polite half smile vanished. It wasn't anger exactly, it was something far more controlled, far more dangerous. She took one deliberate step forward. Karen, expecting resistance in the form of excuses or more denials, looked almost pleased, as if she'd finally broken the stubborn employee in her head. She probably thought she was about to get the compliance she'd been demanding all along. But then, the girl spoke, and when she did, her voice had changed completely. Gone was the calm, quiet tone. In its place came a voice so sharp, so commanding, it was like a verbal slap. "I demand to see your manager." The words rang out in perfect clarity. If I could bottle that tone and sell it, every customer service worker in the world would pay good money for it. It was firm but not screaming, cutting but not vulgar. It was the verbal equivalent of pointing a spotlight straight into Karen's face. Karen froze mid-blink. "What?" she said, her voice suddenly much softer than before. Like she wasn't sure she'd heard correctly. The girl didn't hesitate. She leveled a finger directly at Karen, eyes locked in an unblinking stare. "You heard me," she said. "Get me while you are manager. Now, I will not be treated like this by someone like you, manager, now." The shift in power was so fast it gave me whiplash. Just seconds earlier, Karen had been the aggressor leaning in, barking orders, escalating with every sentence. Now she was on the back foot, staring at this young woman as if she'd just grown a second head. I swear, the volume was perfect, not quite a shout, but loud enough that 3 other shoppers in the nearby aisles turned their heads instantly. One guy in electronics peeked over the top of a TV box like he was watching a live sports match. A woman pushing a stroller actually stopped mid-aisle, pretending to check her phone while clearly tuning in. And the girl, she wasn't done. "Do you understand me?" she continued, taking another small step forward. "I expect better service than this, and I am not going to be brushed off by some random person in a store who thinks they can talk to me like that. Manager, now." It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The finger pointing, the precise inflection on the word manager, the way she spaced out her sentences so each one landed like a blow. It was the kind of performance that could only come from someone who had witnessed far too many Karens in her lifetime and had finally decided to weaponize their tactics against them. Karen's face was a whole slideshow of emotions. First, confusion, then disbelief, then a flicker of panic as she seemed to realize, wait, is this happening to me? Her mouth opened like she was about to argue, but no words came out. Her eyes darted briefly to the side, scanning for, what? A witness, a real employee to back her up. An escape route. The girl didn't let up. "That's what I thought," she said, voice steady. "If you can't get your manager right now, Then I'll be reporting you myself. You don't treat people like this. Not in a store. Not anywhere. Now go get your manager. She emphasized each word in the last sentence with a tiny step forward, closing the gap between them until Karen actually had to take a step back. And she did. It wasn't a big step, but it was enough for the watching audience, yes. By now there was definitely an audience to notice. You could feel the tide turning, like the air had shifted in the room. I had to stop myself from grinning too broadly. I was witnessing a rare sight. A Karen in full retreat. Karen's voice, when it finally emerged, was a pale imitation of the aggressive tone she'd had moments ago. I don't work here, she stammered. The girl's eyes widened in mock surprise. Oh, really? She said, tilting her head. That doesn't matter. Go get your manager. I just told you. Go get your manager. Each go was punctuated with a sharp point of her finger toward the store entrance, like she was sending Karen on a mission she couldn't refuse. Karen's hands fluttered for a moment, half gesture, half defense, before she stumbled back another step, her lips pressed together, and for a brief moment I thought she might actually argue again. But instead, she glanced over her shoulder, muttered something under her breath, and retreated. No dramatic exit, no last insult thrown over her shoulder, just a quick, awkward turn and a fast, slightly clumsy walk toward the front of the store. I swear, if you'd told me she was running off to actually find her boss, I might have believed you. That's how rattled she looked. The girl, meanwhile, stood perfectly still, watching Karen's back until she disappeared from sight. Then, as if the entire exchange had been nothing more than an annoying hiccup in her shopping trip, she smoothed down her shirt, picked up her basket, and strolled down the aisle like nothing had happened. It was glorious, the kind of public confrontation where the good guy actually wins, and the bad guy doesn't even know what hit them until it's too late. And from where I stood, still holding my basket of candles, I realized something. This girl had just delivered a masterclass in handling entitlement. Karen's voice finally cracked under the weight of what had just happened. I don't work here. She stammered. It was almost pitiful. Hearing it now, the bold, finger-snapping authority she had a few minutes ago was gone, replaced by something timid and uncertain. Her words weren't even projected. They slipped out like she was hoping no one else would hear. The girl, however, didn't miss a beat. She didn't blink. She didn't soften. Her expression stayed locked in that same unshakable focus, like she was looking directly through Karen's excuses and straight into her soul. That doesn't matter, she barked. And then it came, the triple strike. Go get your manager. Go, go, go. Each go was delivered with precision, sharp enough to make the air between them feel electric. She stepped forward with every word, her shoes clicking against the tile floor in perfect rhythm, like a drill sergeant inspecting a nervous recruit. And with each forward step from the girl, Karen took one back. It was surreal to watch. Moments ago, Karen had been the one closing in, dominating the space, pushing her demands. But now, the rules had flipped entirely. This wasn't just a retreat, it was an instinctive, almost animal reaction. The way Karen's body language shifted told you everything you needed to know. She wasn't in control anymore, and she knew it. It was like watching the food chain flip in real time. The hunter had just realized she was the prey. Karen's arms, which had been crossed tightly earlier, now hung awkwardly at her sides. Her once firm stance had turned into an unsteady shuffle. Her eyes darted around the store, desperate for a note. Maybe she was looking for a real target employee to jump in. Maybe she was checking if anyone she knew was watching. Maybe she was just trying to figure out how this had gone so horribly wrong so quickly. The crowd that had been subtly gathering in the periphery. Oh, they were eating this up. A guy leaning on a shopping cart in the next aisle had the world's smallest smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. A woman in yoga pants paused in front of a display of throw pillows, pretending to study their price tags while very obviously staring. Even a teenager in a hoodie, earbuds in, had slowed down his walk just enough to catch a piece of the action. Karen glanced from face to face, her expression tightening as the realization sank in. Not only had she lost control of this situation, she now had an audience. And then it happened. Her retreat turned into a full-on escape. She did this weird, almost cartoonish stumble turn, like her body wanted to flee before her brain had finished giving the order. One hand clutched her purse tightly against her side as if the girl might suddenly lunge for it, the other hand flapping briefly before tucking in. And then she trotted, not a confident walk, not a full sprint, a trotting half-run, the exact pace of someone who wants to get out of sight quickly, but also doesn't want to look like they're running from danger. I swear, if there had been a little Yeti sax music playing in the background, it would have fit perfectly. She disappeared around the corner toward the front of the store without so much as a backward glance. It was unclear whether she was actually heading to find her manager or if she was just fleeing the scene before her ego took any more hits. The girl, meanwhile, stood exactly where she was, watching Karen vanish with an expression that could only be described as satisfied neutrality. She didn't smirk, didn't gloat, she just let the silence hang for a second. Then she took a deep breath, rolled her shoulders back, and straightened her shirt with one quick tug, like she was smoothing out the last wrinkle of the encounter. Without a word, she picked up her shopping basket again and strolled over to the next aisle. No rush, no nervous glances, just back to browsing, as though the past 3 minutes had been a minor inconvenience, no more significant than someone accidentally bumping her cart. And that, honestly, was the cherry on top. She hadn't just matched Karen's energy, she'd owned it. She'd taken the exact weapon Karen had been trying to use against her, flipped it, and delivered it back with expert precision. And she'd done it so cleanly that Karen had no counterattack left. The crowd, sensing the show was over, slowly dispersed. A couple of people shared quiet smiles, the kind that say, wow, that was something. One woman even shook her head and muttered under her breath, about time someone did that. I lingered for a few seconds longer, partly because I wanted to commit every detail to memory and partly because I just wasn't ready to go back to the mundane act of shopping after witnessing that kind of performance. The fluorescent hum returned to my ears. The distant Target playlist filtered back in. Somewhere, a child was asking their parent if they could get a toy. Life in the store resumed like nothing had happened. But in that aisle, for those few minutes, we'd all seen something rare, a true reversal of power. And even though the girl had gone back to picking out her items like it was just another day, I knew everyone who saw it would be telling this story later. I wish I could tell you Karen never bothered anyone again. I wish I could say she walked out of that store with her head bowed, muttering apologies, forever changed by the life lesson she'd just received. But let's be honest, people like that don't usually change overnight. For all I know, she marched right into another store the next week and pulled the same stunt on someone else. Maybe she went home and told her friends about that rude girl at Target who had the audacity to yell at her. I can practically hear her version of the story now. She's the victim, of course, and the rest of us are just faceless extras in her grand tragedy. In her retelling, I bet there's trembling lips, and just treatment, and maybe even a tear or two for dramatic effect. Or maybe, just maybe, something clicked. Maybe somewhere in that panicked retreat, when she clutched her purse and scurried down the aisle like a cat caught doing something it shouldn't, she realized she'd finally met someone she couldn't steamroll. Maybe the sting of embarrassment and the knowledge that total strangers had witnessed it would stick with her, and maybe the next time she felt the urge to snap her fingers at some unsuspecting person in public, she'd remember the sharp voice of that girl saying, "Go get your manager," and think twice. One can hope. As for the girl, well, she might as well have won the gold medal in public confrontation. The thing that stood out the most was her precision. She didn't swear, she didn't insult, she didn't resort to petty comebacks. She didn't raise her voice to an ear-splitting pitch or start flailing her arms like a cartoon character. Instead, she took Karen's favorite weapon, demanding a manager and turned it right back on her. And not just turn it back, she sharpened it, polished it, and used it with flawless timing. It was like watching a fencer disarm their opponent and then win the match using the opponent's own sword. The delivery, flawless. The pacing, perfect. The control, impeccable. She didn't just react, she commanded the moment, and the energy in that part of the store changed instantly. People who'd been browsing nearby paused. They pretended to look at products, but their eyes kept flicking toward the unfolding scene. Even after Karen made her awkward retreat, people lingered a beat too long, like they didn't want the spell to break. It felt like we'd all been handed front row tickets to a live theater performance, one we hadn't known we were attending until it was already halfway over. I stood there for a second, basket dangling from my arm, realizing how much I enjoyed watching someone flip the script so cleanly. Because here's the truth, and this is the part that really stuck with me. Some people thrive on control. They get their confidence, their sense of power, from making other people bend to their will. It's not always loud or aggressive. Sometimes it's subtle, like a slow tightening of the reins, but the goal is the same: push until the other person gives in. And the moment they realize they're not in control, they fold fast. It's almost jarring how quickly the bravado evaporates once the dynamic changes. When the target of their behavior doesn't play the role they've assigned them, they don't know what to do next. That's what this girl did so perfectly. She refused to play the role. She didn't waste breath repeating, "I don't work here." She didn't plead. She didn't over-explain. She simply shifted the dynamic in a single move, making Karen the one who suddenly had to answer to her. In that instant, the self-appointed authority figure was reduced to scrambling for an exit. And just like that, game over. The brilliance was in its simplicity. There was no complicated back and forth, no heated debate, no escalation that risked spinning out of control. Just a few well-placed words, delivered with precision, that turned the entire situation inside out. Even after I'd wandered off toward the home goods aisle, I caught myself smiling about it, not because of the spectacle, but because of what it represented. It was rare, satisfying proof that you can shut down entitled behavior without stooping to the same level. By the time I looped back toward the main aisle, the girl had disappeared into another part of the store, blending back into the crowd like nothing had happened. I doubt most people would recognize her if they passed her an hour later. But for those of us who saw it, we'd remember. It's the kind of moment you end up telling at dinner with friends, the kind where you find yourself reenacting the lines, "Go get your manager, go, go, go," just to capture how sharp and commanding it sounded. And somewhere out there, I imagine Karen is telling her own version of events. I doubt she's painting the girl as the hero. But no matter how she spins it, the reality is that for once, she didn't win. And that, to me, is the best part. Because the real lesson here isn't just about shutting down one entitled stranger. It's about recognizing that you can change the power dynamic in almost any interaction. You don't have to meet rudeness with rudeness. You don't have to yell or match their energy or get dragged into a long argument. Sometimes the most effective move is the simplest one. Keep your composure, pick your moment, and flip the script. That girl didn't just stand up for herself, she put on a performance. And the encore was every grin, smirk, and whispered dead. You see that from the people around her, including me. When I finally walked out of the store, my basket held nothing but the boring household items I'd come for: towels, candles, a pack of batteries. But tucked somewhere between those things and my car keys was a memory far more satisfying than anything I'd set out to buy.